Hi, Myvi. This is a review video to take a quick look back on all the problems we've looked at. I want you to be able to look at these problems and know how to do them. Okay. So if you're reviewing this and you want to turn the sound down so you can't hear me blabbering on about it, and just stop the video and look at the problem and think to your mind how you would do it. And then if you can't quite remember, you can start up the video and turn up the sound and hear what I say. But in any case, the reason I do this is to make sure that you have a chance to practice looking at these problems and knowing how to do them. So here we go. This is starting with the first time we met, problem number 3. We're putting together an expression to talk about the total number of messages. So it's Tyrone times P and Armand times M, and that's the total number. It's going to be kind of quick, but you can, of course, pause it and look at the problem anytime you want. Problem 4, we're looking at interpreting that number 108 in the equation. And, of course, the number 108 is not multiplied by the variable. That's the y-intercept. That's in a word problem. That's the initial condition, or the time, what is true when time equals 0. So what is true at the beginning, or when time equals 0. Number 5, we're combining this complicated expression. It's all about combining like terms, seeing which one matches that. You can, of course, combine it all out and look at all the terms, but that takes more time than you need to take. Just look at one of the terms, like the x squared y's, to see which answers fit that, and then see which other term you need to look at. It's very rare you need to look at all the terms. In this case, you need to look at 2 of the terms, but not all of them. And number 6 is interpreting the what the slope of that equation is, the amount that changes every year. In a linear equation, the slope, another way of defining slope, is the amount that y changes every time 1 unit of time goes by. So in this case, it's how much the height changes as every year goes by. Number 7, we're just looking about how to solve that equation for p, and multiply by the reciprocal is the quickest way. Number 8, we have a little puzzle here. And I always advise compare the a over b to the 4b over a and see that they're kind of reciprocals of each other in a way, not exactly. So you can say b over a equals 1/2. So 4b over a equals 4 times 1/2, which is 2. All right. And number 11 is about solving a system of linear equations. And when you find out what x is, plugging x back in to find out what the price is that week. Here we have number 10. This brings out a good point about, they tell you g of 4 equals 8. That means you can substitute that into the equation to find out what a is. G of 4 equals 8 means 8 equals a times 4 squared plus 24. So you find that a equals -1. And then you can put in -1 for x and find out that the answer is 8. Number 13 is about how to combine fractions. It's similar to combining just fractions with just integers, 1/5 plus 1/7. The common denominator is 5 times 7. This is no different. The common denominator is x plus 2 times x plus 3. And you combine it. And a lot of the work on this test is to do with expressions with variables, the kind of thing we know how to do when it's just numbers. But we do the same thing with that. Number 14 is a problem in combining exponential expressions. When you see a power of 2 or sometimes a power of 3 in the problem, you always express that in terms of the base. 8 is 2 to the 3rd, so when you put 2 to the 3rd in for 8, and then go about combining using the exponent combination rules, then the answer works out. Okay, let's look at, this actually is as far as we got in that first session. So let me quickly open up the second whiteboard that we did and see if I can do that without wasting a lot of your time. Where is my V1229? Let's see if it opens up to the right spot. Okay, so we are. Oh, I don't want that. So we are to those last, those bubble-in questions on section 3 of that first test. Number 17 is just using similar triangles. If you see, there's similar triangles are all over the SAT math, so if you see two triangles that look similar, they probably are, and you don't need to prove it, you just need to know it and know that means to look at the proportionality between the sides. This is number 18 is solving that system of equations for x. If we multiply the first equation by -2, we get -2x minus 2y equals 18. And then we can add the two equations together and the y's cancel out. And we get that x equals 7. Number 19 is a kind of trick problem the SAT math likes to do a lot. It has to do with the sine of x and the cosine of 90 minus x. And x and 90 minus x could be the two acute angles of a right triangle. And so sine of one angle equals the cosine of the other angle. And that's just something to get used to seeing different versions of that. Here's solving an equation with radicals. We find out that square root of x equals 10, so x equals 100. Now we're on to section 4. So I guess we talked about number 3. You saw that number 2 was, angle 2 is not equal to angle 1, therefore it must be supplementary. So the answer is 145. Oh, number 2, we didn't do number 2. So they tell you that y equals 24 when x equals 6. That's an example of, they tell you a solution that works. And when they tell you a solution that works, always plug it in. Find out that k equals 4. So we're trying to find out what y is when x equals 5. So y equals 4x. Y equals 20. Number 4, let me see if I'm skipping any. Number 4 is just to be able to translate that expression, that English expression, into mathematics. And figure out what that is. This thing I wrote here has nothing to do with it. That was a side example I was giving you. And just looking at a scatter plot to see what has a strong negative association. Of course, it's that. Oops. It's that, and this one would be a weak negative association. This would be a strong positive association, but this is the one. And number 6 is actually a unit conversion problem. How to convert decograms to milligrams and do it in a way that you don't make a mistake. And the way I wrote it out was a way to write it out carefully. If you can actually see what you need to do, then you don't need to write it all out, but sometimes unit conversions can get difficult. This one, we're trying to find out the scale for the y-axis. And the total number of installations represented on that graph is 27,000 and some. And if we count up how many are represented on this graph, 9 plus 5 plus 6 plus 4 plus, whatever, it's actually 27. So each one of those must stand for 1,000. And that's why number C is right. The number of installation is in thousands. Number 8, look into that expression and see where it's equal to 0 can never equal 0, because the absolute value of anything is 0 at the least. So if you add 1 to that, it's 1 at the least and can never equal 0. Here's looking at a linear equation and what they want you to do. Just glance at the choices. They want you to solve for t, so solve for t. Subtract 1052 from each side, divide by 1.08, and there you go. Number 11 is solving that inequality to get that x is less than or equal to -2. And all of those fit that except for one choice, A, -1, doesn't fit that. They want the average number of seeds in 12 apples. So if we try to find the total number of seeds represented, there are 2 apples that have 3 seeds each. That's 6 total seeds in those 2 apples. 4 apples have 5 seeds each, that's 20 seeds. So on and on, you can figure out the number of seeds represented by each bar on that bar graph, add them up, and you get, I think it's 73. Divide that by the number of apples. 73 divided by 12 is a little over 6. So they want this chart in number 13. They want the which is a category that accounts for approximately 19% of all survey respondents. We can find out what number that is. 19% of all survey respondents is 0.19 times the total number of respondents. 0.19 times 3, 10. And we find out what that is, and then see which entry matches that, which chart entry matches that number best. And that's the answer. I can't remember which one that is, but you know that here they say, look at this number 14, look at this chart of the length of fish. What would change the most between mean and median and range if you took out the highest entry, because it's an error. So now all of a sudden, the median doesn't change at all. That's why I crossed it out. The mean might change a little bit. The one that changes a whole lot is the range. Range is the highest data point minus the lowest. So the range used to be 16 and now it's 8. So the range gets cut in half, which is way more of a change than the mean or the median would make. So number 16, they want you to make an equation for that line. And this one, whenever you're analyzing a graph on the SAT Math, take a look at the scales. The scales in this one are not equal. They're not the same. 1 unit horizontally takes up 4 blocks. 1 unit vertically takes up 1 block. So you can't figure the slope just counting blocks. You actually have to pay attention to what the numbers are on the 2 scales. Okay, number 17. X is at its minimum. I don't know what that is that I was writing here. F of x is at its minimum, where I circled it, and the x when y is at its minimum is -3. That's just being able to read a graph. Number 18, I suggest, and again, that when they suggest a solution that works for these equation or system of equations, plug it in. When we plug in x equals 0, y equals 0, because it is a solution to the system, then we find out that a is greater than 0 and b is less than 0, therefore a is greater than b. Okay, and then we have the 2 product problem in number 19. Fortunately, this one's on the calculator section, so you don't have to deal with all those numbers. Now, number 20, we start with some variable to mean the original price. I chose X. We multiplied by 0.8 for a 20% discount and 1.08 for the 8% sales tax. That means x, the original price, times 0.8 times 1.08 equals p. So solving for x, it's p divided by 0.8 times 1.08, which is d. Not c, but d. Number 21, just read the question first. This is a general tip to look at. If a person is chosen at random from those who recalled at least one dream. So we need to find who that is on this chart. Those who recalled at least one dream is the 1 to 4 or the 5 or more category. And that is 164 people. So right there, you know the answer. 164 in the denominator is only present there. But let's go ahead and show that we can get the numerator too. If a person is chosen at random, what is the probability that the person belonged to group Y? So of the number of people that we're including in this question, the number that is in group Y is 79. So the probability is 79 over 164. So now we got into some tied topics, if you can remember. Talking about finding the remainder. Sine x equals cosine 90 minus x. Talking about analyzing the graphs of quadratics, the sum and product of roots, and what symmetrical distributions mean, and if they're not symmetrical, and the mean and median are different, the mean always goes in the direction of the skew, or the direction that the curve is stretched out. The mean is always more in that direction than the median. Okay, and how to solve for a constant. Look at this one on the bottom here. If 2x plus 4y equals 7, and negative 6, and ax minus 12y equals 3, what value of a would give the system no solutions? No solutions means parallel lines, means same slope, means coefficients of x and y are proportional between the two equations. And we can see the proportionality. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. So to find the answer, we multiply 2 times negative 3. And so a equals negative 6. All right. So let's see what else we got here. Here we have what was a symmetrical distribution that I made into a skew to the right by taking the value and putting it way out there on the right. In that case, the mean is going to be greater than the median. The mean is going to follow the direction of the skew more than the median. The median might change a little bit, but the mean changes more. So this next problem is all about reading a complicated chart and figuring out what they want. I'm not going to run through all that again. Number 24 is about a circle. The general form of an equation of a circle is x minus the x-coordinate of the center plus y minus the y-coordinate of the center equals r squared. So we see with the center is 0, 4, we're looking for x squared plus y minus 4 squared, which is either a or c. And to find out the answer for sure, you would need to find out what r is, or what r squared is. And we can make a little right triangle or use the distance formula to find the distance between the center and this point. And we find out that the distance is 5/3 and the distance squared is 25 over 9. Number 26 is about being able to write an expression for what the situation they describe. So number 25, they want to know approximately how many seconds go by before the ball hits the ground. So you can put 0 in for the height. Now, they say approximately how many seconds, so you could put 5 in for 4.9 and factor it and find out that t times t minus 5 equals 0. So t equals 5 is approximately one of the solutions. The other thing you can do is you could put in your graphing calculator y equals negative 4.9 t squared, or x squared, plus 25x, and see where that parabola crosses the x-axis, because that would be the solution. should cross right about at 5. Number 27 is actually about an estimating problem. They have each of these little plots, each of which is 1% of the whole field. And they count the number of earthworms, and they want to know what's an approximation for the total number of earthworms in the whole field. So given that you look at the answers and they all contain 1, 5, 150, 1500, 15,000. So we can actually take region G to represent the whole problem, because number of earthworms there was 150. So we have to recognize section G is 1% of the whole field. So we just have to multiply the 150 times 100 to get the estimate for the whole field, which is 15,000. You could also add up all these 10 numbers and multiply what you get by 10, since this table represents 10% of the whole field. But that'd be a lot more work. What is this? Oh, system of inequalities. Which quadrant contains no solutions? If you graph the first inequality, you find out that that is actually the solution to the first one is in every quadrant but quadrant 4. Therefore, quadrant 4 must be the answer. It's not present in the first one. Therefore, it's not present for the system. But you can go ahead and graph number 2, find out that the whole solution set for the whole system of inequalities, in fact, doesn't touch on quadrant 4. Number 30 is just asking you which form of this equation shows you the coordinates of the vertex. And of course, that's vertex form. If you find out the vertex of that parabola, it's 1, negative 16. And of course, that shows up in D. This form is probably also accurate, is factored form or x-intercept form. It shows you as constants the two x-intercepts, negative 3 and positive 5. So this is not what they're looking for, but they're looking for the vertex form. All right. So for 31 is talking about Wyatt husking the corn. And they talk about Wyatt can do between 12 dozen and 18 dozen. And they want to know an answer for how long it would take him to do 72 dozen. So you can actually pick out the answer. If he's doing 12 dozen per hour, it would take him 6 hours, and that's an answer. You could say, well, if he's doing 18 dozen ears of corn per hour, then it would take him 4 hours. That's another answer. 5 would be another answer. Actually, anything between 4 and 6 would be an answer, because they don't ask for an integer answer. So it looks like the number 36. Oh yeah, I challenge you to get a graphing calculator and enter that denominator into it. Y equals x minus 5 squared plus 4 times x minus 5 plus 4, and see where that parabola crosses 0, because that is crosses or touches 0, because that is the value of x that makes the denominator 0, which makes the function undefined. And then I see here that I worked out some other problems for you. A rate time distance problem, and also combining two groups. If that no longer makes sense to you, make sure you ask me about them so we can do a couple more examples and lock it into your brain. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, we've gone on to more things. This looks like scale factor. If the scale factor is 2 to 1, any comparison of the area is 2 squared to 1, 4 to 1. Any comparison of the volume is 2 cubed to 1, which is 8 to 1. And so that is scale factor, and that is helpful on a lot of problems. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So I had ours down here. We talked about combining two groups with different means and reviewed a lot of the ones we did before. Let's see what we have here. So number 4 is to see which expression is that expression above. And actually, the easiest way to do this, I mean, that is a perfect square. That is 3a to the 3a squared plus 2b squared, that whole quantity squared. But if you didn't see that, you could just check the leading term. The leading term of the one that we're supposed to match is 9a to the 4th. And so look what the leading term of each of these, a, b, c, and d, would be. 3a squared squared is 9a to the 4th. That's right. 3a to the 4th power is 81a to the 4th. That's wrong. 9a squared squared is 81a squared. That's wrong. And 9a to the 4th is 9 to the 4th times a to the 4th. That is wrong also. So this is the only one that gets the leading term correct. So it must be the right answer. And indeed it is. So in all these, sometimes you just have to check the leading term or a term to get which one is right. Number 5 is solving an equation where there's a radical. They tell you that x equals 7, so please put 7 in for x. Get all the numbers on one side and all the radicals on another side, and then square both sides, and you'll figure out the answer. Number 7 is about combining exponents. Number 8 is kind of tough. They say if the measure of an exterior angle is greater than 50. So find out what it is at 50. If they give you a whole region that's possible for an answer, well, look what happens on the edges of the region. At 50, the number of sides by that equation would be 7.2. So we know we're either going to round that up or round that down. They say it's greater than 50, so look in the equation, n times a equals 360. When you raise a up from 50, n must go down from 7.2. So 7 is the right answer. Here's number 11 is about taking a complex number fraction and rationalizing the denominator by being able to multiply by what's called the complex conjugate, although you don't need to know that term. Number 10, being able to look at this expression and see which one is never below negative 1. So A, let me make a little room here. Absolute value is always 0 or greater. So when the absolute value is 0, then minus 2, that can go down to minus 2. X squared can go down as low as 0, so we subtract 2 and it can go down to negative 2. X cubed actually can go anywhere from negative infinity to positive infinity, so that certainly goes below negative 1. And here it is. This expression, x minus 2 squared, can never be less than 0. Anything squared can never be less than 0 in the real number system. So that's the one. Wait a minute. Okay. Number 13, if you divide everything by 2, you get a quadratic equation where the leading coefficient is 1. Therefore, the sum of the two roots, which is what they want in this question, is the opposite of the middle coefficient, so 8, and that's right. If they were asking for the product of the two roots, it would be this exactly, including the sign, positive 4. Number 15, they ask for some synthetic division, but actually, if you just find out the remainder in this by plugging in negative 3, x equals negative 3, which is the 0 of the denominator, plug that in for x in the numerator, you find out the remainder is negative 17, and this is the only one where negative 17 shows up. So that must be the right answer. Now, they want to know, they say that phrase is if the equation is true for all values of x. That means the coefficients on the left have to equal the coefficients on the right. Specifically, they want to know b, which is the coefficient of x. So all we need to find out are what are the x terms on the left. 2x times 5 is 10x. 3 times 3x is 9x. So on the left, the coefficient of x is 19. On the right, the coefficient of x is b. So b must be equal to 19. All right. Number 20. If the system has infinitely many solutions. Now, I gave you an example before that if you have an equation where they say if the system has infinitely many answers, it means the coefficients of each term on the left is equal to the coefficient of the corresponding term on the right. This one's a little different because it's a system. But if the system has infinitely many solutions, it means that these two are the same line. And any question that they ask you about one line, you can answer about the other line because they are the same line. They want to know what is a over b, which means the coefficient of x divided by the coefficient of y. So do it for this one. The answer is 2 over 8 or 1 over 4. Because they are the same line, you can answer a question about one line with something about the other line. Let's see if that's all we've done or if we've done more. Looks like we have not gotten farther than that. So listen, I'm going to stop this video and then send you the link so you can look at this and see that you can do all of these problems. Bye-bye.